My name is Emma Morty. I am 42 years old, and I live in a quiet apartment just outside the city. I sat across the heavy wooden table and watched my husband, Vincent, fix his silk tie. He looked confident. He looked like a man who had already won. For months, he had told everyone that I was weak. He told them I was pathetic. He told his lawyer to leave me with nothing, and today, he thought the judge was going to give him exactly that. The courtroom was quiet. The air conditioner hummed in the background. I folded my hands in my lap to stop them from shaking. I wasn't shaking from fear anymore. I was shaking from anticipation. Then, it happened. Vincent's lawyer flipped a page in the thick stack of documents I had submitted. He paused. He frowned deeply. He leaned over and whispered just 5 words into Vincent's ear. I watched the blood drain from my husband's face. He turned pale, then gray. His confident smile vanished instantly. He looked up at me, his eyes wide with a sudden, terrible panic. He finally understood. He thought he was taking everything from me. He thought he was stripping me bare. But he didn't know what everything actually meant. I took a deep breath, and for the first time in 3 years, I smiled. He had just signed his own destruction, and he didn't even know it yet. But before I tell how everything flipped, like and subscribe, and tell me in the comment where are you watching from. My name is Emma Morty. I am 42 years old. If you looked at me 3 years ago, you would have seen a woman who looked tired. You would have seen a woman who stood in the background. You would have seen a shadow. I wore simple clothes. I kept my hair pulled back. I never spoke too loudly, and I never interrupted my husband when he was telling one of his stories. But that wasn't always who I was. Before Vincent, I was someone else. I need to tell you about her so you understand why the ending of this story is so important. I met Vincent when I was 23. Back then, I was working at a mid-sized law firm in the city. I wasn't a lawyer, but I was the head paralegal for the senior partner. I was young, but I was sharp. I was the person everyone came to when they needed to find a mistake in a contract. I had a mind for details. I loved numbers. I loved order. I liked things to make sense. My boss used to tell me, "Emma, you have eyes like a hawk, nothing gets past you." I took pride in that. I was disciplined. I woke up at 5 every morning to run. I saved 30% of my paycheck. I had my own apartment, small but clean, paid for with my own money. I was building a life that was solid. I didn't like risks, I liked safety. I liked knowing that if I worked hard, I would get results. Then I met Vincent. He was the opposite of me. He was loud. He was charming. He walked into a room and the energy changed. He was starting his own business back then, a small consulting firm for real estate. He had big ideas, but he was messy. His car was full of fast food wrappers and loose papers. He was always late. He always forgot his wallet. But he made me laugh. He made me feel like my organized, quiet life was boring. He told me I needed to live a little. "Emma," he would say, flashing that smile that made everyone trust him, "you worry too much. Stick with me and we'll own the world." I believed him. That was my first mistake. I fell in love with the dream he sold me. I fell in love with the idea that his passion and my discipline could make the perfect team. We got married 2 years later. It was a big wedding, mostly because Vincent wanted to impress his clients. I remember standing at the altar, looking at him, thinking I was the luckiest woman alive. I didn't see the red flags. I didn't see that he planned the whole wedding, but I paid for most of it. I didn't see that he invited people he barely knew just to show off, while I only invited close family. I only saw his smile. After the honeymoon, the reality set in. Vincent's business was struggling. He was great at shaking hands and buying drinks, but he was terrible at actually doing the work. He didn't understand cash flow. He didn't understand taxes. He ignored invoices. One night, about 6 months into our marriage, I came home to find him sitting at the kitchen table with his head in his hands. There were letters from the bank scattered everywhere. "I'm going to lose it, Emma," he said. His voice was shaking. "The business, it's going under. I owe money I don't have." I looked at the papers. My old instincts from the law firm kicked in. I didn't panic. I sat down next to him. I picked up a pen. "Let me see," I said. That night, I stayed up until 4 in the morning. I organized his receipts. I categorized his debts. I found errors in the bank statements. I created a budget. By the time the sun came up, I had a plan to save his business. Vincent woke up bleary-eyed and looked at the spreadsheet I had made. He hugged me so hard I couldn't breathe. "You saved me," he whispered. "You're a genius, Emma. We're going to be rich because of you." I felt meaningful. I felt needed. I thought this was what marriage was, a partnership. I help you, you help me. I decided to quit my job at the law firm. It made sense at the time. Vincent's business needed full-time attention, and he couldn't afford to hire an accountant or an operations manager. So I became his unpaid employee. I told myself it was an investment in our future. I told myself that his success was my success. I gave up my salary. I gave up my retirement contributions. I gave up my name on a paycheck. I became Vincent's wife. For 15 years, that was my title. I erased the Emma who ran 5Ks and saved money. I erased the Emma who was the sharpest paralegal in the city. I became the woman who drove the minivan, the woman who made sure Vincent's suits were pressed, the woman who raised our son, Tyler, and the woman who stayed up late fixing Vincent's mistakes. I was the foundation. But the thing about foundations is that nobody sees them. They are buried underground. They hold up the house, but they never get the sunlight. I was happy to be the foundation, as long as the house was strong. I was happy to support him, as long as he loved me. I thought we were building something together. I thought that when he won, I won. I didn't know that for 15 years I wasn't building a home. I was building a trap. And I was walking right into it, one day at a time. The business grew. It became a monster that ate all of my time. We called it Vince Global. It sounds impressive, doesn't it? It was a real estate development and consulting firm. On the outside, it looked shiny. We had a nice office downtown with glass walls and modern furniture. We had a fleet of black subs. We had company parties with expensive catering. Vincent was the face. He was the CEO. He was the one who went to the golf courses to make deals. He was the one who gave interviews to the local business magazines. But I was the machine. Every morning, I drove Tyler to school, and then I drove to the office. My desk wasn't in the front. It was in the back in a small room without a window. I liked it that way. I could focus. I handled everything, I mean everything. I managed the payroll for 40 employees. I negotiated contracts with vendors. I dealt with the insurance companies. I handled the tax filings. I tracked every single dollar that came in and every dollar that went out. Vincent hated details. If a client had a complaint, he would say, "Talk to Emma." If the bank called about a loan, he would say, "Emma handles that." I worked 60 hours a week. I didn't get a salary. Vincent told me, "Why do we need to pay you? It's our money anyway. If we pay you, we just have to pay more taxes. We'll just take drawings from the business account for the household." It made sense logically. I trusted him, so I worked for free. I remember one specific year. It was our 10th anniversary. The business had just landed a huge contract to renovate a historic hotel downtown. It was the biggest job we had ever gotten. It was going to put us on the map. I had spent 3 months working on the bid proposal. I wrote the text. I crunched the numbers to make sure we could make a profit. I stayed up until 2 a.m. for weeks, researching the history of the building so our pitch would be perfect. Vincent just read the script I wrote during the presentation. We won the contract. That night, there was a gala dinner to celebrate the project launch. Vincent stood on the stage. He looked handsome in his tuxedo. The spotlight was on him. He held a glass of champagne. "I want to thank my team," he said, his voice booming over the speakers. "I built this company from nothing. I had a vision. It takes guts to be a leader. It takes courage to take risks. And tonight, that courage paid off." I stood in the crowd, holding a glass of water. I waited. I waited for him to say my name. I waited for him to say, "And I want to thank my wife Emma, who actually wrote the proposal and keeps the lights on." He didn't. He thanked his lead architect. He thanked his banker. He even thanked his golf coach. He never looked at me. After the speech, people swarmed him. They shook his hand. "Great job, Vincent. You're a visionary, Vincent." I stood by the wall. A woman I didn't know, the wife of one of the investors, came up to me. "It must be nice," she said, sipping her wine. "Excuse me?" I asked. "Being married to a man like that," she said. "You're so lucky, you don't have to work. You just get to enjoy the life he provides. What do you do with all your free time?" I felt a lump in my throat. My free time? I hadn't had a day off in 5 years. I had spent the entire day fixing a payroll error that Vincent caused because he promised a bonus he didn't clear with me first. "I keep busy," I said quietly. "Well, you're lucky," she repeated and walked away. That was my life. I was the invisible engine. And it wasn't just the business, it was home too. Vincent wanted the perfect life to show his clients. That meant a big house in the suburbs. It meant dinner parties for 12 people. I cooked the meals. I cleaned the house because Vincent said the cleaning lady stole things. She didn't, he just lost them. I mowed the lawn because he wanted to save money on landscaping. I raised Tyler. Vincent was a Disney dad. He showed up for the fun stuff. He took Tyler to baseball games on Saturdays when people were watching. But who helped Tyler with his math homework every night? Me. Who stayed home when Tyler had the flu and was vomiting all night? Me. Who went to the parent-teacher conferences? Me. Vincent would come home at 8 p.m., smell the dinner I made, and complain that the steak was a little dry. He would sit on the couch, turn on the TV, and say, "I'm exhausted, Emma. I've been carrying the weight of the world all day. Get me a beer." And I did. I got him the beer. Because I thought that was my job. I thought I was being a good wife. I thought that by supporting him, I was securing our future. I didn't realize that every time I fixed a problem for him, I was making him stronger and myself weaker. I didn't realize that by not taking a salary, I was making myself financially invisible. On paper, I didn't exist. The business was in his name. The house was in his name for liability reasons, he had said. The cars were in the company name. I had nothing. But I didn't worry. Why would I? We were married. We were a team. He loved me. He needed me. There was no way he could run this empire without me, or so I thought. I was building a castle for a king, brick by brick, with my own hands. I didn't know that once the castle was finished, the king would lock the gates and leave me outside in the cold. It happened on a Tuesday. There was nothing special about that Tuesday. It was raining. I had spent the morning dealing with a tax audit for the company, another mess Vincent had created by mixing personal expenses with business ones. I had fixed it, of course. I always fixed it. I made lasagna for dinner. It was Vincent's favorite. I had a bottle of red wine breathing on the counter. Tyler was upstairs in his room, playing video games with his headphones on. Vincent came home at 7:15 p.m. Usually, he would come in loud. He would slam the door, drop his keys, and start talking about his day. This time, it was silent. The door opened quietly. He walked into the kitchen. He was wearing his expensive gray suit, the one I had picked up from the dry cleaners yesterday. He didn't look at me. He didn't look at the lasagna. He walked to the kitchen island and placed a manila envelope on the granite countertop. The sound of the envelope hitting the stone was the only noise in the room. Slap. "We need to talk," he said. His voice was strange. It wasn't angry. It wasn't sad. It was flat. It sounded like he was ordering a coffee. It was business. I wiped my hands on a dish towel. "Okay, is something wrong with the audit? I told you I handled it." "It's not the audit," he said. He still wouldn't look at me. He was looking at the refrigerator. "I want a divorce." The world stopped. I didn't breathe, I didn't blink. The words hung in the air like smoke. "What?" I whispered. "I want a divorce," he repeated. He finally looked at me. His eyes were cold. There was no love in them. There wasn't even hate. There was just nothing. It was like looking at a stranger. "Vincent, what are you talking about?" I moved toward him. "Is this a joke? Are you stressed? We can." "It's not a joke, Emma," he cut me off. "I'm done. I've been unhappy for a long time. We've grown apart. You're boring. You're always tired. You're always nagging me about money and numbers. I need someone who matches my energy. I need someone who inspires me." Boring? Tired? I was tired because I ran his entire life. I was nagging because I was trying to keep him from going bankrupt. "I have a lawyer," he said, tapping the envelope. "These are the papers. I suggest you sign them. I want to make this quick." I reached out and opened the envelope. My hands were shaking so bad I almost ripped the paper. I pulled out the document. It was a separation agreement. I scanned it. My legal training came back, fighting through the shock. I read the terms. The husband retains sole ownership of the marital home. The husband retains 100% of Vince Global and all associated assets. The husband retains the vacation property. The husband retains all vehicles. The wife receives a one-time payout of $10,000. I looked up at him, my mouth open. "Vincent, this says you keep everything. The house, the business. I built that business with you. I've worked there for 15 years for free." "You helped out," he scoffed. "You were an assistant. I built the business. I'm the face. I'm the brand. You just did some paperwork." "Some paperwork," I screamed. "I am the CFO, the COO, and the HR department. You don't even know the password to the bank account." "It doesn't matter," he said calmly. "It's all in my name. You have no claim to it. I checked." He crossed his arms. He looked so smug. He looked like he was negotiating a deal with a weak subcontractor. "And Tyler," I asked. My voice broke. "What about our son?" Vincent looked at his watch. He actually checked the time while destroying our family. I'm a busy man, Emma. I have an empire to run. I can't be driving him to soccer practice and dealing with teenage drama. He looked me dead in the eye. You can keep the child, he said. He said it like Tyler was an old piece of furniture he didn't want anymore. You can keep the child, not our son. Not Tyler, the child. You want the house, the cars, the money. But you don't want your son, I asked, my voice barely a whisper. It's better for him, he said with a shrug. I'm going to be traveling. I'm starting a new chapter. He'll just slow me down. You're a mother, that's what you're good at. You take him. I'll pay the state minimum for child support, but I want the house. You have 30 days to get out. He turned around and walked to the fridge. He took out a bottle of water. Oh, and Emma, he said, unscrewing the cap. Don't try to fight this. I have the best lawyers in the city. You have no income. You have no job. You have no savings. If you fight me, I will bury you. I will drag this out until you are homeless. Just sign the papers, take the 10 grand and go. He took a sip of water, walked past me, and went upstairs to pack a bag. I stood in the kitchen. The smell of the lasagna was making me sick. I looked at the papers. He wanted everything. He wanted to erase me. He wanted to throw me away like a used wrapper. And the worst part, the part that hurt more than the money, more than the house, more than the 15 years of wasted life. It was that he traded his son for a Porsche. I stood there for an hour. I didn't cry. I think I was in too much shock to cry. I just felt cold. Deeply, freezing cold. That night, Vincent slept in a hotel. I slept in Tyler's room, on the floor next to his bed, watching him sleep. I was terrified. I was 42. I had no job history for 15 years. I had no money of my own. My husband, the man I had dedicated my life to, had just declared war on me. And he was right. He had all the power. The next few weeks were a nightmare. Vincent didn't move out. He said it was his house, so why should he leave? Instead, he moved into the master bedroom and locked the door. He forced me into the guest room down the hall. It was a small room. The mattress was old and lumpy. It was where we used to put his drunk friends when they stayed over after parties. Now it was my home. I woke up every morning to the sound of him singing in the shower. He was happy. He was lighter. He whistled while he made coffee. He started treating me like an unwanted tenant. If I was in the kitchen, he would walk in and say, "Can you leave? I need to make a call." If I was watching TV in the living room with Tyler, he would come in and change the channel without asking. Then his mother arrived. Vincent's mother, Barbara, had never liked me. She thought I was too quiet. She thought I wasn't flashy enough for her golden boy. 2 days after he asked for the divorce, I came home from grocery shopping to find Barbara in the hallway. She was holding a roll of black garbage bags. "What are you doing?" I asked, putting down the grocery bags. "Helping Vincent clean up," she said, sniffing the air as if I smelled bad. "He needs space for his new life. We're packing up your things." My heart hammered in my chest. "My things? You can't touch my things." "Oh, relax," she snapped. "Just the clutter, the old clothes, the knickknacks. You have 30 days to leave, Emma. We're just getting a head start. You should be thanking me." I ran upstairs. In the hallway, there were 3 black garbage bags sitting by the door. I ripped one open. Inside were my books. My photo albums from before I met Vincent. The sweater my grandmother knitted for me before she died. They were thrown in there like trash. "Stop it," I yelled. It was the first time I had raised my voice. "Get out of my house," Barbara laughed. It was a cruel, dry sound. "It's not your house, dear. Vincent paid for it. It's his name on the deed. You're just a guest who stayed too long." I grabbed the bags and dragged them into the guest room, locking the door. I sat on the floor, hugging my grandmother's sweater, and cried. I cried until my throat burned. But the humiliation didn't stop at home. It went public. Vincent didn't wait for the divorce to be final. He wanted to show off his upgrade immediately. Her name was Jessica. She was 26. She was an influencer. She had very blonde hair, very white teeth, and very little clothing. Vincent brought her to the company picnic. I shouldn't have gone, but Tyler wanted to go. He loved the annual picnic. So I went, intending to stay in the background. When Vincent's car pulled up, the new Mercedes convertible he had bought the week after asking for a divorce, everyone went silent. He stepped out wearing sunglasses. Then he opened the passenger door and Jessica stepped out. She was wearing a short white dress. She giggled. She held his arm. Vincent walked her through the crowd like she was a trophy. He introduced her to the employees, people I had hired, people I had known for 10 years. "This is Jessica," he beamed. "She's bringing some fresh energy to my life." The employees looked at me. Some looked pitying. Some looked away, embarrassed. But nobody said anything. Nobody defended me. Nobody said, "Vincent, your wife is standing right there." They were afraid of him. They wanted their paychecks, so they smiled at Jessica. They shook her hand. They told her she was beautiful. I stood by the potato salad, feeling like a ghost. I had planned this picnic. I had ordered the food. I had organized the games for the kids. And now I was watching another woman reap the rewards of my labor. I went to the bathroom to wash my face. When I came out, I bumped into Sarah. Sarah was my best friend. We had known each other since college. She was the one person I had told everything to. I had cried on her shoulder the day Vincent asked for the divorce. I told her about the garbage bags. I told her how scared I was. "Emma," she said, looking startled. She was holding a glass of wine. "Can you believe this?" I whispered to her. "He brought her here in front of Tyler." Sarah looked down at her shoes. She didn't look angry. She looked guilty. "Well," Sarah said slowly, "you have to admit, Emma. You and Vincent have been unhappy for a while. Maybe he just needs to be happy. Jessica seems nice." I felt like I had been punched in the stomach. "Nice," I stared at her. "He's cheating on me. He's kicking me and Tyler out of our house. He threw my things in garbage bags." "Look," Sarah said, her voice getting harder. "Vincent is a powerful man, Emma. He has a lot of connections. My husband does business with him. I can't just cut him off because you guys are having issues. You need to be realistic. You're being a bit dramatic about all this." She patted my arm. It felt like a slap. "Maybe you should just sign the papers," she added. "Don't make a scene. It's embarrassing." She walked away. She walked right over to Vincent and Jessica, and I watched her laugh at something Jessica said. I stood alone in the middle of the park. The sun was shining, music was playing, and people were eating the food I ordered. I realized then that I was truly alone. My husband was gone. My home was being taken. My credit was his. My friends were his. Even my history was being rewritten by his mother. I looked over at Tyler. He was sitting on a bench, alone, eating a hot dog. He wasn't playing with the other kids. He was watching his father hold Jessica's hand. He looked small. He looked broken. That was the moment the sadness turned into something else. I looked at Vincent, laughing with his head thrown back. He thought he had crushed me. He thought I was weak. He thought that by taking my money and my friends, he could make me disappear. He forgot one thing. He forgot that I was the one who fixed his messes. He forgot that I was the one who knew where the bodies were buried. He forgot that while he was the face of the company, I was the brain. I wiped my tears. I straightened my back. I walked over to Tyler, took his hand and said, "Come on, we're going home." I wasn't going to cry anymore. It was time to remember who I was before him, and it was time to show him what happens when the foundation decides to shake the house. I could handle the insults. I could handle the garbage bags. I could even handle seeing my husband parade his new girlfriend around like a prize. But I knew where Vincent would strike next. He knew that the only thing I loved more than my dignity was our son, Tyler. Tyler was 14. It is a difficult age for a boy. He was trying to figure out how to be a man. And unfortunately, the only man he had to look up to was his father. For years, I was the one who was there. I was the one who drove him to practice, checked his homework, and made sure he ate vegetables. I was the bad cop because I had rules. Vincent was the good cop because he was never there, and when he was, he brought gifts. After the picnic, things changed in the house. Vincent started a campaign to turn Tyler against me. It wasn't subtle, it was brutal. One Friday afternoon, I was in the kitchen making a sandwich for Tyler. He usually got home at 3:30. I heard the front door open, but I didn't hear the usual thud of his backpack. "Hey Ty," I called out. "I made turkey and Swiss." Tyler walked into the kitchen. He wasn't wearing his backpack. He was wearing a brand new leather jacket. It was expensive, too expensive for a 14-year-old. He was also holding a new iPhone, the latest model. He looked at me with a strange expression. It was a mix of defiance and pity. "Dad bought it for me," he said, seeing my eyes on the jacket. "It's nice," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "But Tyler, we talked about expensive gifts. You have a perfectly good coat." "Dad said you'd say that," Tyler snapped. He crossed his arms. "Dad said you're just jealous because you can't afford to buy me nice things. He said you want us to be poor." I froze. The knife twisted in my gut. "Tyler, that is not true," I said softly. "I want you to be happy. But money isn't everything." "That's what losers say," Tyler said. I gasped. "Excuse me." "Dad said you're a loser," Tyler said, his voice rising. He told me the truth, Mom. He told me that the reason the divorce is happening is because you stopped supporting his dreams. He said you were dragging the company down. He said you're trying to take all his money so we can't have a fun life. My hands shook as I set the knife down on the counter. Vincent was rewriting reality. He was poisoning my son's mind. Tyler, your father is. He has his own version of things, I said. But I have always supported this family. I worked every day for that company. Dad says you just did paperwork, Tyler scoffed. He says Jessica is cool, she has a Porsche. She said she's going to take me to a concert next week. Front row. He looked at me with disgust. Why do you have to be so difficult, Mom? Just sign the papers. Dad said if you just sign the papers, he can buy me a dirt bike. But if you fight him, he has to spend the dirt bike money on lawyers. There it was, bribery. Vincent was buying my son's loyalty with a dirt bike. I am fighting for what is fair, Tyler, I said. I am fighting for our future. You're fighting for yourself, Tyler shouted. I hate you. I want to live with Dad. He's a winner. You're just sad. He stormed out of the kitchen. He slammed his bedroom door so hard the pictures on the wall rattled. I stood in the silence of the kitchen. That was the moment something broke inside me. It wasn't my heart. My heart had already broken weeks ago. This was something else. It was my fear. For weeks I had been afraid of being poor, afraid of being alone, afraid of losing my status. But hearing my own son call me a loser because his father bribed him, that replaced my fear with cold, hard anger. Vincent had crossed a line. He hadn't just cheated on me. He hadn't just stolen my money. He had stolen my son's respect. He was using our child as a weapon to get a better divorce settlement. I walked to the sink and washed my face with cold water. I looked at my reflection in the window. I looked tired. I looked sad. No more, I whispered to the glass. Vincent wanted a war. He thought he had already won because he had the loud voice and the big checkbook. He thought I was just the quiet wife who did the filing. But he forgot something. I was the one who did the filing. I was the one who saw the numbers. I dried my face. I didn't go upstairs to comfort Tyler. He needed time. Instead, I went to the guest room and pulled a small, locked box out from under the bed. Vincent thought he was a king, but kings get overthrown when they treat their subjects like dirt. He wanted to play dirty? Fine. I wouldn't play dirty, I would play smart. I opened the box. Inside was a USB drive. I held it in my hand. It was small, silver, and cold. To anyone else, it looked like a piece of plastic. To me, it was a nuclear bomb. Vincent had turned my son against me. He had made me the villain in my own house. He wanted to take everything. Well, he was about to get exactly what he asked for. To understand how I beat him, you have to understand what I found 3 years ago. It was a Thursday night. Vincent was out entertaining clients, which I later learned meant gambling at the casino and buying drinks for women half his age. I was at the office, late, as usual. I was preparing the quarterly tax filings. Vincent had been acting strange about the mail lately. He had redirected the bank statements to a PO box that he said was more secure. He told me he wanted to handle the big picture finances now. He said I was too bogged down in the details. But I knew Vincent. He didn't handle details. I had a bad feeling, so I did something I had never done before. I hacked into his email. It wasn't hard. His password was his own name followed by 1. Vincentone. He was that arrogant. I logged in, expecting maybe to find emails to another woman. I found those, yes, but I found something much worse. I found emails from the bank. I opened one. It was a foreclosure warning. My heart stopped. Foreclosure on the commercial building, but we were making money. I saw the revenue coming in every month. I dug deeper. I spent the next 6 hours going through every single folder in his digital life, and what I found made me sick to my stomach. Vince Global was a lie. Yes, money was coming in, but Vincent was spending it faster than we could make it. And he wasn't just spending it, he was borrowing against it. He had taken out 3 separate loans on the business that I didn't know about. He had forged my signature on 2 of them. He had a second mortgage on our house. A huge one. He had taken out $400,000 in equity 2 years ago. Where did the money go? Gambling. I found statements from online betting sites. He had lost $50,000 in a single weekend. He had lost hundreds of thousands over the years. But it got worse. He was using new loans to pay off old loans. It was a Ponzi scheme, but he was the only investor and the only victim. He was shuffling money around to make it look like we were profitable, but we were drowning. The empire was hollow. It was a shell. The business had $2 million in assets, but it had $4 million in debt. The house was underwater, we owed more than it was worth. If the creditors called in their loans today, we would be destitute. I sat in that office chair, shivering. My husband wasn't just a bad partner, he was a financial criminal. And because my name was on the original incorporation papers, I could be liable too. That night, 3 years ago, I almost confronted him. I almost screamed at him when he walked through the door. But I stopped myself. If I confronted him, he would deny it. He would gaslight me. Or worse, he would panic and do something even more reckless to try and fix it. He would drain the last few dollars we had. And if I divorced him then, the court would look at our assets. They would see the business and the house. They would split everything 50/50, which meant I would get 50% of his debt. I would be ruined. I would lose my credit score. I would be working until I was 80 just to pay for his gambling. So I stayed quiet. I played the role of the dutiful wife. But secretly, I started building a firewall. I stopped putting my name on anything new. When he needed a signature for a refinance, I pretended to be sick or busy or incompetent until he got frustrated and found a way to do it without me, usually illegally, which just dug his grave deeper. I started saving every penny of cash I could get my hands on. Grocery money he gave me, I saved half. Birthday money, saved. I became a spy in my own marriage. I tracked the collapse. Over the last 3 years, the hole got bigger. He stopped paying the payroll taxes, a federal crime. He stopped paying the vendors. He was robbing Peter to pay Paul, and Paul was getting impatient. By the time he asked for a divorce, Vince Global was technically bankrupt. It just hadn't been declared yet. He was living on credit cards and prayers. But here is the twist. Vincent didn't think I knew. He thought I was just the paperwork girl. He thought he had hidden the mail well enough. He believed his own lie. He walked around in his expensive suits, driving his leased car, believing he was a millionaire. He truly thought his company was worth millions. He ignored the debt letters. He lived in a fantasy world where he was the king. So when he handed me those divorce papers, demanding everything, he thought he was stealing a gold mine from me. He didn't know he was stealing a burning building. He wanted the business. He wanted the house. He wanted the assets. I realized then that this wasn't a tragedy. It was an opportunity. If I fought him for half, I would get half the debt. But if I let him win, if I let him take everything, then he would take the debt too. He was handing me a lifeboat and handcuffing himself to the Titanic. I just had to make sure he didn't realize it until the ship went down. The strategy was simple. Give him what he wants, but make it look like it's killing me. Vincent needed to feel like he was winning. His ego was his biggest weakness. If I offered him the business, he would be suspicious. But if I fought for it, and then he beat me, he would take it with a smile. First, I had to protect myself and Tyler. I had a small inheritance from my aunt that I had received 5 years ago. It wasn't millions, but it was enough to start over, about $150,000. Vincent knew about it, but he had forgotten. He was so focused on big deals that he didn't care about my little money. I went to a lawyer quietly. I didn't go to a high-powered divorce shark. I went to an old friend from my law firm days, a woman named Karen. She was smart, quiet, and vicious when she needed to be. "Karen," I said, sitting in her small office. "I need to give my husband everything." She looked at me over her glasses. "Emma, usually people come here asking to get everything. You want to give it away. I want him to take the business. I want him to take the house. I want him to take the cars," I said. "And in exchange, I want him to assume 100% of the liabilities associated with those assets. I want an indemnification clause so thick it could stop a bullet. I want it to say that I am not responsible for any debt, past, present, or future, related to Vince Global or the marital home." Karen looked at me confused. "But Emma, isn't the business worth millions?" I smiled. I pulled out my USB drive and handed it to her. "Look at the balance sheet." Karen plugged it in. She clicked a few files. Her eyes went wide. She whistled low. "Oh my God," she whispered. "He's insolvent. He's drowning." "Exactly," I said. "He doesn't read the reports. He thinks he's rich. He wants to leave me with nothing, so I'm going to let him." Karen grinned. It was a shark's grin. "I like this plan, but we have to sell it. If we just offer it, his lawyer might check the books." "His lawyer is his golf buddy," I said. "He's a personal injury lawyer. He doesn't know corporate finance, and Vincent is too arrogant to let anyone look at his books, even his own lawyer. He'll tell him it's fine." "Okay," Karen said. And what about the inheritance? Put it in an irrevocable trust for Tyler, I said, for his education. Make me the trustee. If it's in a trust for the child, Vincent can't touch it. He said he doesn't want custody, remember? He can't demand the child's money. We spent the next week drafting the paperwork. It was a masterpiece of legal trap setting. The agreement stated that Vincent would retain sole ownership of Vince Global, acting as CEO and president, entitled to all profits, revenue, and assets. It sounded prestigious. But the next paragraph said, the husband agrees to assume sole responsibility for all liabilities, loans, mortgages, tax liens, and encumbrances attached to said entities, holding the wife harmless. It was a standard clause, but in this case, it was a death sentence. During this time, I played my part at home. I walked around looking defeated. I wore old sweatpants. I let Vincent see me crying. I thought about my grandmother to make the tears real. When Vincent saw me crying, he would smirk. It's hard, isn't it, Emma? He said one night, stepping over a box I was packing. Realizing that you're nothing without me. It's very hard, Vincent, I said, sniffling. I'm scared for the future. You should be, he said. But don't worry, I'll make sure Tyler has a good life. He can visit you in whatever little apartment you end up in. He'll see the difference between success and failure. I bit my tongue so hard I tasted blood. Just wait, I thought. Just wait, he was pressing me to sign. He wanted to marry Jessica. He wanted the house free and clear so he could renovate it for her. I set a date for the mediation, he told me. Next Tuesday, bring a pen. And don't bring a fight or I'll cut off the credit cards immediately. I'll be there, I whispered. I spent the weekend organizing my files. I made copies of everything. The tax fraud, the gambling debts, the hidden loans. I put them all in a safe deposit box at a bank Vincent didn't use. I wasn't just planning a divorce. I was planning an escape. The trap was set. All I needed was for the mouse to be hungry enough to snap it. And Vincent. He was starving for validation. He was starving to prove he had won. He was about to eat the cheese, and the metal bar was going to come down on his neck. The conference room was cold. It smelled of floor polish and stale coffee. Vincent sat at the head of the table. He was wearing a navy blue suit that I knew cost $3,000. He had a gold watch on his wrist. Jessica wasn't there, thank God, but his lawyer, a man named Bob who smelled like cigar smoke, was next to him. I sat on the side next to Karen. I wore a plain gray cardigan. I kept my head down. Let's make this quick, Vincent said, checking his watch. I have a tea time at 2. We have reviewed the proposal, Karen said, her voice calm. Emma is willing to agree to the majority of your terms. Vincent raised an eyebrow. He looked surprised. He expected a screaming match. Oh, she came to her senses. She acknowledges that you built the business, Karen continued. She knows she cannot run it without you. She is willing to waive her claim to Vince Global. Vincent sat back, a smug smile spreading across his face. Finally, some honesty. However, Karen said, she is concerned about her financial security. She is giving up a lot of potential equity. She's giving up nothing because she did nothing, Vincent snapped. She wants to keep her personal inheritance, Karen said. And she wants to keep her $401,000 from before the marriage. In exchange, she will sign over the house, the business, the cars, and the vacation property. Vincent laughed. He looked at Bob. Can you believe this? She wants to keep her little piggy bank. Fine, how much is it? $100,000, I make that in a month. He didn't make that in a month. He lost that in a month. But he couldn't help bragging. So, we have a deal, Bob asked. One detail, Karen said. She slid the thick document across the table. Since Emma is giving up all rights to the assets, we need to make sure the separation is total. This clause here says you take all the debt associated with the business and house. Clean break. She walks away with nothing, but she owes nothing. Vincent didn't even read the paragraph. He just heard she walks away with nothing. Fine, fine, Vincent said, waving his hand. I'll take the debt. What is it? A mortgage? A car payment? I can handle it. I'm the one with the cash flow. Bob, the lawyer, should have paused. He should have asked for a current balance sheet. He should have asked to see the books. But Bob was lazy and Vincent was rushing him. It looks standard, Bob said, shrugging. I just want to be done, I said, my voice trembling. I looked up at Vincent with tears in my eyes. I just want peace, Vincent. You can have it. You can have the empire. I can't fight you anymore. Vincent looked at me with pity. You were never a fighter, Emma. That was always your problem. No vision. He pulled a gold pen from his pocket. He clicked it. I'm doing you a favor, really, he said as he signed the paper. You couldn't handle the pressure of my life. He signed his name with a flourish. Vincent D. Morty. He pushed the paper toward me. I picked up the pen. My hand hesitated, not because I was scared, but because I was holding back a scream of triumph. I signed, Emma Morty. Done, Vincent said. He stood up and buttoned his jacket. Well, that was easier than I thought. Bob, send the filing to the court immediately. I want the decree next week. You got it, Vince, Bob said. Vincent looked at me one last time. Good luck, Emma. Try to find a job. Maybe a receptionist or something simple. He walked out of the room. He walked out like a conqueror. I waited until the door closed. I waited until I heard the elevator ding down the hall. Then I slumped back in my chair. Karen looked at me, a slow smile spread across her face. He didn't ask, she whispered. He didn't ask about the second mortgage. He didn't ask about the credit lines. He thinks he's a god, I said, taking a deep breath. Gods don't ask questions. You're free, Karen said. Once the judge stamps this, you are legally severed from his debt. He just voluntarily took on $4 million of liability in exchange for assets worth maybe $2 million. He's bankrupt, I said. He just doesn't know it yet. I stood up. I didn't feel sad anymore. I didn't feel weak. What now? Karen asked. Now, I said, picking up my purse. I go get my son. And then I watched the show. I walked out of that building into the bright sunlight. The air felt different. It felt lighter. For the first time in 15 years, I wasn't carrying the weight of Vincent's ego. I wasn't carrying the weight of his lies. He had the weight now, all of it. And I knew exactly when it was going to crush him. The final court hearing was a formality. This brings us back to the moment I told you about at the start. We were in the courtroom to finalize the decree. The judge had the papers. Vincent was there, checking his phone, probably texting Jessica about dinner plans. He looked bored. The judge, an older woman with sharp glasses, looked at the file. She frowned. She looked at the financial disclosure I had submitted. The real one, the one Vincent had never bothered to read because he thought he knew everything. Mr. Morty, the judge said, I am reviewing the division of assets and debts. You have agreed to assume all liabilities for Vince Global and the marital residence. Yes, Your Honor, Vincent said, standing up. I'm the sole owner. I'll take care of it. Are you aware, the judge asked, that the listed debts for these entities exceed $4.5 million, while the appraised value is less than $2.2 million? The room went silent. Vincent froze. He blinked. Excuse me, the liabilities, the judge repeated. The 3 mortgages on the commercial property, the secondary lien on the home, the outstanding payroll taxes. You are accepting over $2 million in negative equity. That was the moment. That was the moment his lawyer whispered to him. That was the moment he turned pale. Vincent looked at me. His eyes were wide, filled with sudden, terrifying clarity. He realized I hadn't been incompetent. I hadn't been lazy. I had been watching. He started to stammer. Wait, no, that's not right. The company, the valuation. The numbers are clear, Mr. Morty, the judge said. And you signed the agreement. You had legal counsel. You waived discovery. She stamped the paper. Bang. Divorce granted, she said. Next case. Vincent slumped into his chair. He looked like a balloon that had been popped. His lawyer was frantically flipping through papers, realizing he had just committed malpractice by letting his client sign that deal. I stood up. I smoothed my skirt. I walked past Vincent. He couldn't even speak. He was gasping for air. Goodbye, Vincent, I said softly. I walked out of the courtroom. The fallout was fast and brutal. Within 30 days, the bank foreclosed on the business building. Vincent tried to get a loan to save it, but he couldn't, because his debt-to-income ratio was destroyed. Jessica left him the week the Porsche was repossessed. It turns out she wasn't interested in a man who had to move back in with his mother. The house, our big, beautiful suburban house, was sold by the bank to pay off the second mortgage. Vincent got nothing from the sale. He lost his reputation. In our town, word travels fast. Everyone found out he was a fraud. The country club revoked his membership. His friends stopped returning his calls. As for me, I moved into a small, clean apartment with Tyler. It wasn't fancy, but it was ours, and it was peaceful. Tyler was angry at first. He missed the big house. He missed the promise of the dirt bike. But then he saw his father. He saw Vincent unravel. He saw Vincent screaming at waiters. He saw Vincent blaming everyone else for his failure. He saw the desperate, angry man behind the mask. One night, about 6 months later, Tyler and I were eating pizza on our small balcony. Mom, he said. Yeah, Ty. Dad asked to borrow money from me, he said quietly. From the trust fund you set up. I put down my pizza. What did you say? I said no, Tyler said. He looked at me. I said you told me that money was for my future, not for his mistakes. I reached out and squeezed his hand. I'm proud of you. You knew, didn't you? Tyler asked. You knew he was going to crash. I knew, I said. You're smart, Mom, he said. It was the first time he had complimented me in 2 years. You're really smart, I smiled. I'm just organized, honey. I went back to work, a real job this time. I got hired as an operations manager for a logistics company. They paid me a full salary. They gave me benefits. They respected me. I drive a Honda now. It's reliable. I pay my bills on time. I have savings in the bank. Sometimes I see Vincent around town. He looks older. He looks tired. He drives a beat-up sedan. He avoids my gaze. I don't hate him anymore. I don't feel anything for him. He is just a lesson I learned. I learned that silence isn't weakness. I learned that dignity is worth more than a mansion. And I learned that the most dangerous person in the room isn't the one shouting. It's the one who knows the numbers, keeps the receipts, and waits for the right time to sign her name. I built a new life from the ashes of the old one. And this time, the foundation is mine. If you enjoyed this story of justice and reclaiming power, please like and follow for more stories about women finding their strength in the darkest moments. Share this with someone who needs to be reminded that they are stronger than they think.